Imagine a landmass larger than the entire area of all but 9 countries in the world, all under the ownership of a single entity. In the United States, this is a reality, with the federal government owning around 640 million acres of land, larger than the total area of all but 9 countries in the world. The expansive ownership of land by the US federal government in the western states is a significant aspect of America's geographic and political landscape. Approximately 47% of all land in the western United States is federally owned, a concentration that is notably higher in this region compared to other parts of the country. This vast expanse of territory, reaching across mountains, deserts, and forests, is more than just a geographical marvel. It's a complex web of history, policy, and ongoing debates. But before we dig any deeper, click that like and subscribe button and hit the notification bell to stay updated with our latest videos. This channel will keep you updated on the most intriguing videos on economic topics all around the world. To get a good understanding of how and why so much of these lands are federally owned, we need to take a quick look in history and see how we got here. The story of federal land ownership in the western United States is intrinsically linked to the nation's expansionist history and policy evolution. This journey began as the young nation looked westward for growth and development. The US government's acquisition of land in the West started with the Louisiana Purchase in 1803 and continued with subsequent treaties and purchases, including the acquisition of territories from Mexico and the Oregon Treaty with Great Britain. These acquisitions laid the groundwork for federal ownership in the region. One of the pivotal pieces of legislation influencing land ownership was the Homestead Act of 1862. This act allowed any American, including freed slaves, to claim up to 160 acres of federal land. The claimant needed to live on the land, cultivate it, and build a dwelling to gain ownership. The Homestead Act accelerated settlement in the Western Territories and transferred millions of acres from federal to private hands. Later, the Federal Land Policy Management Act of 1976 played a significant role. It marked a shift from the disposal and homesteading policies to a regime where the remaining public lands were retained in federal ownership, emphasizing conservation and sustainable use. The westward expansion, driven by the belief in manifest destiny, was a key factor in shaping land ownership. This period saw a surge in settlers moving westward, attracted by the promises of land and opportunity. The expansion was facilitated by railroads, the discovery of minerals, and advancements in agricultural technology, which made farming in the arid West more feasible. This expansion led to a patchwork of land ownership and use patterns, with significant tracts remaining under federal control due to their size, aridity, or resource value. The management of these lands has since been a balancing act between development, conservation, and public use, reflecting the changing priorities and values of the American people. That brings us to today. In specific states, the federal ownership is even more pronounced. For instance, in states like Nevada, Utah, Idaho, Alaska, and Oregon, the federal government owns the majority of land. Nevada is the most notable example, with 85% of their land managed by the federal government, the highest percentage of any state. Alaska has the most federally owned land, more than 1/3 of the total, with a whopping 223 million acres. The types of land owned by the federal government include national parks, which are preserved for their natural beauty, historic significance, and recreational value. National forests, managed for sustainable timber harvesting, wildlife habitat and recreation, as well as military bases vital for national security. Additionally, lands are used for resource management, such as grazing and mineral extraction, and for protecting wildlife through refuges overseen by the US Fish and Wildlife Service. The primary difference between state and federally owned lands lies in their management objectives and jurisdictional control. State lands are typically managed with the state's economic interests in mind, such as generating revenue through resource extraction or land leases. In contrast, federally owned lands are managed under broader national policies focusing on conservation, historical preservation, national security, and public recreation. The federal government's role in land ownership in the West has roots in the country's expansionist history. These lands were initially acquired during the westward expansion, and their management has evolved over time, reflecting changing national priorities and values. The vastness and diversity of these lands makes them a crucial part of America's natural heritage, contributing to the nation's identity and offering a range of resources and recreational opportunities. Understanding the dynamics of federal land ownership in the western United States provides insights into broader themes of land use, environmental stewardship, and the historical evolution of the nation's relationship with its natural resources. The extensive federal land ownership in the western states of the United States plays a significant role in shaping both the economic and social landscapes of these regions. The impacts are multifaceted, affecting local economies, communities, and sparking debates over land management. The first and foremost impact is tourism. Federal lands, especially national parks and monuments, are major tourist attractions. These sites draw millions of visitors yearly, contributing substantially to the local and national economy through tourism spending. For instance, national parks in the West, like Yellowstone and Yosemite, have a significant impact on the hospitality and retail sectors in their respective areas. In 2021, nearly 5 million people visited Yellowstone, benefiting the local economy to a tune of $834 million and supporting just under 9,000 jobs. Yosemite had 4 million visitors, bringing $624 million to the local economy and supporting more than 6,000 jobs. Another impact to the economy is the resource extraction in these lands. The mining sector in the western states is a cornerstone of the US economy, bringing in $700 billion annually. The extraction of minerals on these lands is vital not only for economic output, but also for supplying essential materials for various industries, ranging from technology to construction. Secondly, oil and natural gas production on public lands is a major contributor to the nation's energy supply. In 2019, commercial activities on public lands generated more than $111 billion in economic output. This includes the revenues from oil and gas leasing programs, highlighting the importance of these activities in bolstering economic growth and energy security. Federal lands are also crucial for timber harvesting. Sustainable timber harvesting from these lands supports the construction industry and contributes to local economies. It also aids in forest management and wildfire prevention efforts. On the social side, there are effects on local communities and land access. The presence of federal lands can simultaneously be a boon and a challenge for community development. On the one hand, these lands provide natural areas close to population centers, contributing to a higher quality of life and attracting both residents and businesses. They often serve as vital recreational and conservation spaces, enhancing community well-being. However, the significant federal land ownership can also limit the availability of land for housing and commercial development, exacerbating housing scarcity and potentially driving up property costs in nearby areas. Access to federal lands is crucial for communities, particularly for those dependent on industries like tourism, outdoor recreation, and natural resource extraction. The management of these lands can directly impact local economies, influencing job opportunities and economic stability. For instance, protected lands can attract tourists, boosting local businesses, while restrictions on lands can affect industries reliant on resource extraction. Then there's the debate of whether particular lands should be federally or state managed. Proponents of federal land ownership argue that it ensures the conservation and protection of natural resources and ecosystems across vast landscapes. Federal management, which includes agencies like the Forest Service and Bureau of Land Management, is seen as crucial for preserving national parks and public lands for recreational use and environmental conservation. Those in favor of state or local management of these lands argue that the states are better positioned to understand and meet the specific needs of their residents. A study suggested that state-owned lands in the West achieved better fiscal results than similarly purposed federal lands. This perspective emphasizes that state management could potentially lead to more efficient use of resources, tailored land use policies, and improved economic benefits for local communities. After the federal and state conservation, there's the battle between whether these lands should be conserved or developed. Advocates for conservation argue that protected public lands are crucial for preserving natural habitats, biodiversity, and ecosystems. They point out that these lands are an important competitive advantage, supporting faster economic growth in the West through tourism and outdoor recreation. Research shows that protected public lands promote jobs and higher incomes in the West, underlining the economic value of conservation. Moreover, conservation ensures the sustainability of natural resources for future generations, providing spaces for recreation and the preservation of American natural heritage. On the other hand, proponents of development argue that these lands could be better utilized to meet the growing demand for housing, resource extraction, and commercial development. They point to data suggesting that state land trusts yield significantly higher revenue than federal land, indicating developed lands could potentially contribute more significantly to state and local economies. The development of these lands could lead to job creation, especially in industries like mining, timber, and oil and gas. Ultimately, the decision on whether to conserve or develop federal lands in the West hinges on prioritizing either immediate economic benefits or long-term environmental and recreational value. We hope this video gave you a comprehensive understanding of how and why the US government owns so much land in the western states. As always, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more in-depth global economic content.